Hello, everyone, and good morning from Seattle. And thank you, Hiram and Circle, for having us here to talk. Again, my name is Fernando. I'm the branch manager at the U.S. Bank in the University of Washington Hub location. So we're located on campus. My background is I was a UW student myself, and I graduated from the Foster School of Business in 2017. I also have a project management certificate through UW. And
Oh,
today we'll be go
really?
ahead and talk about the all the banking basics within the U.S., how things work, and terminology. We're going to go over different types of banking products that we are offered, a brief overview of how credit works in the U.S., and we'll go over some scams that you may encounter. So here's my contact information here if you ever need to reach us. Again, we're right on inside the hub building on the main floor, in the middle of campus. But if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. I would love to have this be a conversation, and I'll stop and answer them throughout the presentation. And anything I miss, I will answer at the end. And in the chat, it'd be awesome to drop where you're attending from and who's watching this right now. So, to get started, if you're looking to make everyday purchases with your card in the US, you're probably going to want a checking account. This is because in the US, the debit card is linked to your checking account. I know that in other financial systems, such as India, the debit card is actually attached to the savings account. But that is not the case here in the US, and it cannot be done. Some things you're going to want to be aware of even before you pick a bank that you would like to choose is look at the fees. Ask them, do they have any student benefits in particular? Is it going to be free for a particular time? Do you waive wire transfers? Will I get a card right away? Is there any extra things I need to do in order to open an account? Do I have to have a social security number? These are some of the things that we're going to talk about as we go through this presentation. But in general, the checking account is going to be a good place to start, and anyone will be able to have access to getting one. So here are what are called deposit products. So as we talked about, the checking account is one. If you want to have everyday purchasing, most U.S. accounts are going to have a Visa debit card. So Visa is accepted all over the world. So if you were to bring your card back to your home country, you should be able to use it. Some things to keep in mind is if you do end up getting a card and have it as your primary spending here in the U.S., it and you go back to your home country, there could be additional fees if you were to use it because it would be considered an international transaction. This fee is typically 3%, but it's always good to check with your bank if they do provide options for waiving foreign international fees. In addition to the checking account, there's also a savings account. So this is a way where you can keep your money separate. It can also earn interest, but the main purpose of it is to have an account where you can put money aside where it's not linked to your debit card for safety. For example, let's say you had most of your money in your checking account and you were to lose your card and someone were to spend money on it, well, you're never liable in the US because of our laws. You're able to go to your bank and do what's called a fraud claim, and you can get your money back. However, that process can take some time to get your funds back. So, a way to protect yourself is to have a savings account where you can keep a bulk of your money in there and transfer in your checking as you need it. So, if that were to happen to you, then you might not lose as much money, or you'll have a backup in case the fraud claim takes a while. There are also different types of accounts where you can earn interest on the money that you already have, such as what's called a certificate of deposit, where your money is locked in for a certain period of time and it will earn interest on those amounts. And then after that time period's up, you're able to redeem the entire amount, including interest. And there's also what are called money market accounts, but these will typically have very high balance requirements in order to earn the interest. So again, something to keep in mind when you're looking for a bank is what are the fees going to be? What student benefits do they offer? And when would they end? The different banks would have different requirements for that. So it's always good to see what their monthly fees might be. And here's a brief overview of the credit offerings within the US. One of the most common ones you're going to encounter will be credit cards. You may also see what are called lines of credits. The last two offerings are more if you think you'll be here for a very long period of time, such as an installment loan, which could be you getting a car if you needed to travel around, or a mortgage, which is a home loan. I will focus on credit cards later on this presentation as you will be likely to encounter this, especially if you're going to be working here in the US, and it will be extremely beneficial for you if it's used properly. So here are some other products and services that you can encounter in banks, and you might want to check if it's offered. So common ones that you can encounter will be your debit card to see if it'll be linked to your checking account. Typically, getting a debit card is free and getting any replacements are free, but you will want to check with your bank to see if they charge if a card is lost. You're also going to want to see the ATM access that your bank will provide as you're if you're using your own bank's ATMs, it probably won't charge you any fees, but they may charge if you use another bank's ATM. But in the US, any ATM you use is required to disclose if it's going to charge you a fee. So if you find a surcharge free ATM, you're in the clear to do withdrawals. If you're going to be living off campus, some of the companies may require you to do an initial deposit via what's called a money order or a cashier's check. Typically, you can just go into your bank and request one of these, but these will usually have a fee because it's considered a secure check, which is why these rental companies prefer to do this in particular. You'll also encounter what's called person-to-person payments. So if you wanted to send money to your friends, you're able to do so. In the US, it's really popular to do it. There's a service that's called Zelle that I'll talk about later, but there are also several popular third-party ones that you may hear about, like PayPal and Venmo. And for remittance transfers, that's a way where you can transfer money internationally. um, these are usually third parties. You could go to your bank if you wanted to send money back to your home country. Well, it will typically be a little bit more expensive, but it is secure. There are third parties such as Zoom, which is owned through PayPal, and Wise, which will be cheaper, but it is through a third party. So that's kind of the well, you'll have to weigh if you would prefer the security through your bank or using the cheaper third party. Personally, I've used Wise many times to send money to my family in the Philippines, and I've had no issues. So, what do you need to do to open an account in the US? So, if you happen to have a social security number because you might have lived in the US in the past, you will need to provide that as well as a government issue ID. Most likely, it can be your passport. If you don't have a social security number, that's fine. You'll probably have to visit the bank in person, but you're going to want to bring your passport with the visa page in there. And it's always a good idea to bring your I-20 form just in case. It says here that you'll need to bring a W-8, but typically, if you're opening an account, the bank will know because you don't have a social security number, you'll have to fill out this W-8 form, which supports your foreign status, but the bank will be able to provide you that as well. So, what happens if you end up getting an SSN here? Let's say you end up working, or you're a graduate student who is already coming in knowing that they're going to be working and are applying through an SSN. Um, finding either through finding campus job, or you're going to be continuing to work afterwards when you have OPT. You're going to want to visit the bank and add your social security number to the account, as this will open up many avenues for you to obtain credit, as well as one of the that banks verify you is the last four of your SSN number. And this just adds another layer of security for yourself. At this point, almost all banks will have some sort of mobile or online banking capabilities to check your balances. Once you get a US number, it's highly recommended that you switch your app store to the US version, as many banks apps will only be in the US version of the store. A tip I've heard from other students in the past are if you don't want to switch your account, your Play Store for that particular account is just to simply use your UW email or another email that you have to create a new account from the Android or Apple Play stores, since it's free. And then it's easier to switch just logging out and logging back in. So you don't have to cancel any apps on your original login from your home country. And you're able to have a US account where you have access to all the apps here in the US. So one way you can send money is through the person-to-person services that I talked about. But this one is called Zelle. It's a free, it's fast, and it's safe. And at this point, over 180 banks in the US use Zelle. And it's actually co-owned by the seven largest banks in the US, including us at US Bank, Bank of America, Capital One, Chase, Wells Fargo. But Zelle is built into the banking apps for almost all these large banks. And you're able to send someone money simply with just having a phone number or email. It's nice because you don't have to provide them your personal account numbers and information. And it's a safe way because it'll be instant as well. So, an important thing to know in the US is the difference between your account routing number as well as your debit card number. So in the US, the debit card number is always going to be a 16-digit number. If you look at the example of a card on the left, you'll see typically the card will have your name, the 16-digit number, a valid date, and then there'll be what's called a security code or a CVV code, and it's typically a 3-digit code that you'll use to buy things online. What some folks get confused on, especially if they have families or guardians sending them wire transfer from overseas, is they'll accidentally provide the debit card number instead of the account number, which could cause the wire to not arrive. What will happen typically is it'll get sent back and then they'll have to resend the wire. So, to prevent that, when you open your account, you're going to want to make sure that you have your account and routing number. This will typically be on the same page that is given to you. The routing number is always going to be a 9-digit number. And then the account number could vary in length, but always verify with your bank how long this could be. Another way of payment, if you have to do it manually, is via check, and you may encounter this. So this is an example of how to write a check. And if you ever need help, you can always reach out to your financial institution for assistance. But basically, just to go through how a check works, it's going to show on number one your routing number. Number two is going to be your full account number. So if you're needing verification of those information, you can always ask your bank for a voided check. Number three is going to show the check number. The four is you'll put the date line. In the US, we use the month, date, year format. If you're going to do it the other way, I would recommend spelling out the month to prevent any confusion there. Number five, the pay to the order line is who it's going to. So if it's like your landlord, it's going to be the company name, or if it's a person, you'll put their name there. Number six, you'll put the amount in that box in numbers. So if it's like $1,000, you'll just write that out in numbers. In number seven, you're going to write out what is in number six, the amount line in words. Number eight is where you'll sign. This is the most important portion to verify your check. Also, if your checkbook was stolen, that's how your bank would be able to verify if it was you. They would compare that check to your signatures. So you want to keep your signature as consistent as possible. And number nine is optional. This is a memo line. Sometimes, like for example, if you're paying UW tuition via check, they'll ask you to put your student ID number. So it's a good idea to ask whoever you're giving a check if they need anything in the memo line for additional verification. So receiving an international wire transfer. So if you're receiving a transfer from your home country, some information you're going to want to provide to your sending bank are going to include your account number, the routing number, your name, the address, and specifically for receiving international wire transfers, you're going to need to provide what's called the SWIFT code or SWIFT number. Every bank in the US has a unique SWIFT code in order to receive funds internationally. So you'll want to double check if that. Yet another follow up to that is you'll also again want to check with your bank to see if they do waive incoming international wire transfers, especially if you're a student or if they offer any programs that do so, as it will save some cost for you as well. And some folks might come with particular travel cards, or I hear the term forex cards. Um, there are ways where you can go into a bank and do a cash advance off the card to pull actual funds in there. Typically, we see this have either no fee or very low fees, like 3% for pulling funds off. But it's always good to visit your institution and see if they're able to take money off of your Forex card for you. Something that you'll encounter this what no matter what bank you go to is you're required to make a selection for overdrafting. It's going to be yes or no. So what happens if you select the yes option is, let's say you only have $10 in your account and you want to go and buy something from the store that's $20. If when you make your selection at the bank, if you say yes to the option, what that will do is it will allow you to complete the transaction. But if you only have $10, that would make you go to negative 10. Typically, at most banks, if you stay negative for one day, it will charge you an overdraft fee the next day. And that could cause you to keep going into a bigger hole. The other option is you can select no, where if you were to attempt that same transaction and then it sees that you don't have enough money, it will decline the transaction instead of letting it go through. So you can complete it, but you also you won't go negative. It's highly recommended that you select the no option to prevent this from happening for you. But at this point in time, many banks are offering overdraft forgiveness, where even if you do go negative and get that fee, if you're able to get positive by the next day or a certain amount of days, they will just waive it for you. Now that we've gone over the basics of just the checking account savings products, I just wanted to do a brief overview of credit. Especially going to be useful if you're going to be here for 2+ years, or any master's or PhD students that will be here for way longer than that. So, what is credit? So, credit is borrowing money with the understanding that is going to be repaid. And what this looks like in the US, there's different ways, but there's a credit score. So what a credit score is it ranges from 300 to the maximum of 850. So if you don't have a credit score in the US, you don't start at zero and work your way up. You actually start without a number, and then eventually you get a score once you finally get credit. We'll kind of talk about how that works here in a couple moments. So, why does credit matter in the US? So, having access to credit cards what allows you to earn rewards compared to the standard debit cards here in the US. Many credit cards also offer a waiving foreign transaction fees. So, if you were to go home and use the card instead of charging you 3%, many cards won't charge you anything. Credit cards are also safer in the way that you're using virtual money until you have to make a payment. For example, say you had a debit card and it's taken and someone uses it. That money is actually taken from your account. Of course, you're never liable from that, as I was talking about earlier, but it could take some time to be recredited from the amount that was taken. Let's say the same instance happened with your credit card and you noticed someone was using it and you reported it, they would just simply erase that from your transaction history and give you a new card. And you wouldn't have to go through the pain of waiting to get your money back. You can also have more favorable terms when you're renting an apartment. I've spoken to a few international students where they were saying they had issues finding off campus housing, because either the landlord required a credit score or which either led them to being denied for that particular location, or a different stipulation where they had to either put a higher down payment um, uh, in order to get the place. Where simply having a credit score can ensure you can avoid these steps, and you could potentially, if you have a better score, you can beat out other people looking for a same place. Another thing in the US that it could be useful for is if you're looking to go at hotels or car rentals. If you use a debit card to pay for a hotel, what they can do is put a hold on the amount for what's called incidentals, which could prevent you from using that certain amount of funds for a certain amount of days. So it can be anywhere between $150 to $200. And then they put a hold on those funds, and it can take about 5 to 7 days for the hotel to release the funds back you for use. But with a credit card, this holding time is typically a lot shorter. It's only usually up to 3 days, and they are able to return it with no issues. The reason why they put the hold on the debit cards is to ensure that there are enough funds in the checking account that are available for use. For car rentals, you can still use the debit card, but again, sometimes they might charge like higher rates for that one, or they might have you put down a secondary card in order to rent a vehicle. Let's see here. Some long-term benefits of having the credit card. So if you spend time working on a good score, it can help you get a loan if you need it down the line. Sometimes folks will choose to do like a summer quarter and they'll need some short term funding. That's a good way if you already start building a score in order to secure that funding. The reason why someone might be able to also get a lower interest rate by having a higher score is because a lender may see you as less risky, because having a high score is a good indicator that they're going to be paid back. Building a good score is also beneficial if you're looking to move here and be here long term. If you're looking for getting a home or a car here down the line, and again, different lenders will have different credit score minimum requirements depending on the types of loans that you could get. So, how do you apply for credit? So, you're going to need a social security number. So, if you end up finding a campus job, or you already have research set up, you should be getting in the process of applying for a social security number. So, you're going to want to visit your bank and update that. You're going to want to have your employment history ready. Sometimes a bank will ask to verify your employment. So if you get paid, especially if you work through UW, you're going to be able to access that through your workday to provide pay stubs as proof. They may want to see your checking or savings accounts balances in order to prove you can pay it back. Um, and then typically, that's the best way to get started getting a credit. So you may ask, well, what if I don't have a credit history? Well, if you don't have a credit history, what a bank will do to base your credit worthiness is to look at the relationship you have with them. So the best way to start is if you already started at one particular bank, but you don't have a credit score, it's a good idea to start building credit with them in particular, mainly because what they'll base you off of is your balances and your history with them, since they don't have anything else off to go off of. If you were to go to another institution and didn't have a relationship and try to do an application, will probably get denied because they don't have anything to look at there in particular. The other option to get started is what's called a secured card. How this works is you're able to put money down, which becomes your credit limit. And because it's secured, a bank may be willing to give you a card with the limiting factors. Because if you were not able to pay it, they could just take the funds that you put down. But secured cards are nice because if you choose to close it, you're able to get your full amount back there as well. So credit in itself is a whole nother subject to learn. But if you get to the point where you're finding yourself in the position to get a card or looking for any credit needs, I highly recommend talking to a financial institution for a refresher before applying for any products, just to have an understanding of how it works. But once you get credit, here are some ways that you can improve your score. Just making sure you're paying off your cards and every month, using it responsibly, just staying within your means. I know it can be hard where if you really want to go to like a concert event or you really want to get a laptop because you're able to with your credit card, but just being able to push it off can cause issues for you down the line. So just to continue to use it on everyday purchases, and then not opening too many accounts at one time because it could be seen that the person is in financial distress, which could cause your credit score to go down. And you'll always want to pay it on time to prevent your score from going down as well. So the last thing we wanted to cover today was about scams that you may encounter here in the US and how you can avoid falling victim to them. I will say, always feel comfortable going in person to visit your branch to talk about a situation before acting on it. Sometimes scammers can try to scare you by name dropping people you know or telling you things about yourself, but they were probably able to find these things online. But the biggest thing to keep in mind is to not send these people any money, gift cards, and also, as a side note, if they threaten you to come to arrest you, you can honestly immediately ignore them because in the US, the police would never call you to arrest you. They would just show up if there was an issue. So I wouldn't take any of the threats seriously, and I would go ahead and report that, which I'll talk about later. So here are some common types of scams, but some that I really see here at the UW are the employment offer scams. You're gonna see where sometimes people will act like they're a business or even imitate a professor, and they're gonna with the scam we see with this particular type is if the job that they're gonna offer you is they're gonna send you money to usually buy supplies, and they'll usually send you a check to deposit at your bank or send you an email with an image of a check to deposit. They'll have you buy the supplies and say, "Oh, I sent you too much money. Can you send some back?" Well, what usually happens in this case is the check ends up being bad. And if the money was already spent, it could leave the person with no money or in a negative amount. So I would be extremely cautious with this type of scam, especially if it's employment offered online. If you're at the UW and you're finding a campus job, I'm pretty sure every single person is going to do at least a some sort of in-person verification or interview. So that's a good way to get started there. Another one that we see is a great apartment deal scam, especially if you're looking for off campus housing. I highly recommend being able to check out the place in person before putting any money down, including holding deposits. If you send the person a check, money online via Zelle or Venmo, you might not be able to get it back. And a new scam that we are seeing is your people get like a text message saying that they have a package from the postal service, FedEx, UPS. Those are common companies here to get packages delivered. I highly recommend not clicking on any links. It could try to download software to your phone where they try to take your information. If you do have those services, I would already have signed up on those particular websites for alerts either through their app or you can check and call one of their locations directly to verify if you did get a package. So, how are some ways you can spot the scams? Um, a few things you can do for yourself is it too good to be true? Am I getting a job without having to compete against so many people for it? Have I just won the lottery where someone's trying to give me money all of a sudden out of nowhere? Am I giving out too much information that to someone that I've never met before? Are they trying to play me on my emotions to make decisions I might not normally make? If the situation feels weird, again, feel free to always feel comfortable to go to your bank or talk to someone about it before you act on it. So here are some ways you can protect yourself by using a secure password so no one else has access. To check your bank balances and statements to see if there's any weird transactions. Again, if you notice something, you can call or visit your bank right away to initiate a claim, to cancel your cards or accounts and get new ones, and also get your money back if you do know something. If you end up getting credit cards and having credit, checking your report to see if there's any weird activity there as well. Speak to people you trust. Again, go to your bank if you need assistance. And some things you won't want to do are clicking on links that could end up leading to malware on your phone, sharing your personal information to people that shouldn't have that information, sending money to folks that you haven't met before, paying for things that you might not understand, and sharing the login information. So, how can you report the scam to authorities? So, you can call your bank or talk to the particular companies where you might have noticed this fraud. If it was a credit situation, you can talk to a credit agency. You can file a report with the local police department. So, with here, that'll be the local UW police department. And if your think identity was stolen, you can also create an identity theft report via this website right here as well. And with that, that's all we had today.